Hello, literarians. Welcome back to the Literary Lori YouTube channel. I'm Literary Lori, and this is the channel for the people who love to read books or write books that center to the lives of Black people and or other people of color globally, and for people who are interested in following my journey from being a journalist and journalism professor based in the United States, also an award-winning author of nonfiction, to transitioning to being a novelist based in the south of Spain. Yes, that is the journey I am on right now, and it's why I started this YouTube channel to document all of that. But this episode is not about me. It's about my commitment to show up on YouTube every single day in the month of February to share an amazing story of an amazing Black writer born in February. So yeah, this is my way of honoring and celebrating Black History Month by making it Black Literary History Month, because I'm Black and bookish, and any opportunity I get to make something literary, I'm going to do that. So this episode, I'm going to bring you the story of another incredible Black writer born in February. Now, I do want to just make a personal note that this is a challenge for me, like literally and figuratively. I promised that I was going to take YouTube seriously starting in 2026, and I decided that I was going to, do this challenge, show up every single day in February, talk about something I love, which is Black people and books, Black authors, writing, all this stuff. But I'm just going to tell you, it has been the biggest challenge not to get up here and talk, because I'm a talker. I love talking. The biggest challenge, seriously, is the tech. Like, I'm so sorry. I'm using my headphones. I actually bought a microphone after listening to the audio yesterday, scratching on my sweater, and I just realized that it doesn't work with my phone. Oops. So we're going to be with these earphones a little bit longer. And the other big issue, girls, I don't know, the hair. I work from home. I'm a writer. I don't even have to get dressed every day if I don't want to. I mean, we writers can work in our jammies. We can work in bed. And we certainly aren't trying to be camera ready. Now, I promised myself I wasn't going to focus on being camera ready. However, I am definitely aware that I'm not going to win any beauty contest. I'm just like, I don't want to come up totally crazy. So doing the hair every single day for this is a challenge. So today we're going with the turban. So anyway, if you see me with all these different crazy hairstyles, it's because, first of all, I've had locks for the last so many years, and I just combed my locks out. So I don't even know what to do with my natural hair. So, I mean, I know, but I don't have a style system in place. So please don't be distracted by my hairdos or lack thereof. And I'm working on the audio. So sorry, but if you're still here, thank you. So let's get into today's amazing author. We are talking today, because it's day 6, February 6th, if you're watching in real time. I have my clipboard. We are talking about Melvin B. Tolson. Okay, I'm gonna call him Melvin B. Almost Mel B, but that would be cheating on, people. I don't want people confused with the Spice Girls. Melvin B. Tolson, as he's most known, was born on this day, February 6th, 1898. And he was a famous poet, educator, columnist, and politician. So now let's get into his story. And again, some of these writers that I'm talking about, you might never have heard of, even though they were famous in their time. And I'm hoping that by doing this series, some of these maybe forgotten or unknown writers and authors will be remembered, because honestly, I'm not even picking just random people. I'm literally picking out writers and authors who were big deals in their times. Some of them have lasting presence, obviously, like Langston Hughes, for example. But all of the writers that I am talking about were truly, the big deal in their time, in their lifetime. All right, so Melvin Tolson. By the way, my dog just walked in the room, so if you do hear some pitter patters, that's him. So you might actually know Melvin Tolson because he was the subject of a 2007 film called The Great Debaters, directed and starring none other than Mr. Denzel Washington. So in that movie, they talked about Melvin's incredible role as a debate coach at the historically black college, Wiley. It's called Wiley College, and it's in Marshall, Texas. But we're not here to talk about Melvin Tolson's role as a debater, which was incredible. He was an incredible educator, college professor, debate coach, theater coach, all of these things. But we're going to be talking about his role as a poet. And you can go watch The Great Debaters if you want the other story about the other parts of his life. Again, multifaceted human being, but we're going to focus on his poetry. So Melvin was born in Moberly, Missouri in 1898, one of 4 children. His father was a minister and his mother was a seamstress. He graduated from Lincoln University, the same university as Langston Hughes. He graduated with honors, and he married and had 4 children. Soon after he graduated from college and had gotten married, started his family, that's when he moved to Texas and got his job at Wiley College and worked there from 1924 to 1947 for a good long time. Now, keep in mind that Melvin was always interested in writing and poetry, but he's a black man with children to support and he had to work. But he was always, thinking about writing and thinking about his poetry. He actually started writing poetry and got his first poem published when he was in school, when he was a young boy, and he was actually nominated to be the poet laureate of his high school class. But it wasn't until it was 1930 that he won a fellowship and he was able to go to Columbia University and get a master's degree. He got I guess would be a sabbatical from teaching. And he went to Columbia University and got a master's in English and comparative literature. His thesis project was The Harlem Group of Negro Writers. That was the title of his thesis. And for that thesis, he interviewed a lot of the Harlem Renaissance writers and poets. And that apparently was a crucial and critical time for Melvin, where he really got to take his writing life seriously. So he was really, I think the best thing you could say that this was his time to be a selfish artist. Imagine, again, having a college career. Again, he was coaching those debaters, 4 kids. So this was the only time in his life, these 2 years, where he could really deepen his knowledge, work on his own writing, and not worry about, taking care of other people. So this was truly a turning point for him where he really could define what his writing life would, or his writing voice, I should say, would be like and what it would be about. Okay, turning pages here. So he goes to Columbia, hobnobs with all the Harlem Renaissance writers, as well as the modernist poets who were also very influential for him. But he had to come back home, back to college, back to family life, and even he was elected mayor of his town and served for 3 terms. He also picked up a newspaper column that was called Caviar and Cabbage, and it was a column where he basically wrote about Black life in America. So he's just a busy man, right? And he was still writing his poetry, but you can imagine with all of this other stuff going on, it was really hard for him to find the time. And unlike living in Harlem for those 2 years, he didn't have a poetry community to be a part of, or a literary community to be a part of. So it was really a work of self-discipline to continue to write his poetry and to submit his poetry for publication. But he had a hard time actually getting published. He was not taken very seriously as a poet right away, but he kept trying. He kept working at it. Finally, in 1941, he published a poem called Dark Symphony, and it was picked up by The Atlantic. The Atlantic at the time was called The Atlantic Monthly, and some critics say that this was his greatest work. In the poem Dark Symphony, he was comparing and contrasting African American and European history. That poem went on to win first place in the American Negro Exposition National Poetry Contest. And it was the poem was so powerful that it was eventually set to music by Earl Robinson and performed by none other than Paul Robeson. So, Paul Robeson was a big deal. And for him to sing this poem that Tolson wrote, it made the poem even more accessible to even more people. So that was like a big turning point when Dark Symphony was published, and it started to get Melvin a lot more attention. So after that poem was published in 41, in 1944, Melvin Tolson was finally able to get his first collection of poetry published, and that was called Rendezvous with America. Here's what Richard Wright, yes, that Richard Wright, said about Tolson's poetry. He said, quote, "Tolson's poetic lines and images sing, affirm, reject, predict, and judge experience in America, and his poetry is direct and humanistic. All history, from Genesis to Munich, is his domain. The strong men keep coming, and Tolson is one of them." Then in 1947, the president of Liberia, William V.S. Tubman, made Tolson the poet laureate of Liberia. Yeah, the poet laureate of Liberia. At this point, Melvin Tolson had never been to Liberia. He had never left the country. But because of the circles that he was in, it's all connected back to Lincoln University. And, it's a long story that I can't get into right now. But the point is that the president of Liberia knew of Tolson's work and was so impressed by it. He was like, "You're going to be the poet laureate of Liberia, okay?" And Tolson's like, "Okay." And so by 1953, when Liberia was having their 100th, the nation was having its 100th anniversary, Tolson crafted the libretto for the Republic of Liberia, which was another poem, and it is considered a major modernist work. And more attention, like that garnered him even more attention. You could imagine a libretto for the 100th anniversary of an entire African nation. One critic, Donald Gibson, said this about the libretto for the Republic of Liberia. He called it, quote, pyrotechnic. And he credited Tolson with creating, quote, a system of tensions not unlike the dynamic forces holding an atom or a galaxy together. Each element threatens to go off on its own, yet as long as the balance of forces remain constant, the system functions, unquote. So Tolson is writing some experimental poetry. People compare it to jazz. They call it like jazz poetry. And this is when things really start to heat up for Melvin B. Tolson. And I want you to remember that this man is still a full-time college professor, still getting his kids educated, raising his kids with his wife. But he is like, I am a poet and I'm going to do whatever I need to do. And now things are, again, people are really starting to recognize his genius. So in 1954, after he makes this incredible poem for Liberia, in 1954, Liberia confers upon him the Order of the Star of Africa. And that same year, Breadloaf Writers Conference gives him a fellowship in poetry and drama, and Lincoln University gives him an honorary doctorate of letters. So again, 1954 is a big year for Tolson. And so now he's got this like international reputation. He's produced a book, the libretto. He's a big deal. And again, what's really exciting about his work is that his work is really unique and original, and he's doing things that other poets aren't doing. So in 1956, Tolson makes his first and only trip abroad, and he goes to Liberia to President Tubman's third inauguration in Monrovia. Then he stops in France on his way home, stops in Paris to hang out with his friend Richard Wright and his son, Melvin Jr., who's studying at the Sorbonne University. Yeah, so just as an FYI, when I say that he's busy raising his kids, all three of his sons end up with PhDs and his daughter has a master's. So all of his children were highly educated, again, showing the dedication he had to educating his sons, his children, as well as the multiple number of students that came through his classroom. So he's writing, he's doing fellowships, he's traveling, he is finally living the life that, he, I guess, would say he always wanted as a poet. But then tragedy strikes, and in 1964, Melvin is diagnosed, thank God, not with tuberculosis. I guess it's not thank God, because he's diagnosed with terminal cancer, and he's given only 6 months to live. However, Melvin's like, I'm not ready to die, okay? Cancer can't have me. I got more poems to write. It's true. So that happened in 1964. They're like, you dude, you have like 6 months to live. Well, Melvin was like, no, I'm not ready. So in 1965, he's actually given a 2-year fellowship at Tuskegee Institute, and is basically, he's given the Avalon Poet in Residence. So he's there as a poet in residence. And then he gets another collection published, another poetry collection, Harlem Gallery. It was published in 1965 as well. Now, this is an incredible work. The poem consists of several sections, each beginning with the letter of the Greek alphabet. And it talks about African American life. And again, it is composed in a jazz style. And it was called Intellectually Dense and with rich allusions. It's crazy. So this is considered a poetic masterpiece, okay? And it said, one of the reviewers said, from the Saturday Review, said that this poem, this collection, Harlem Gallery, made Tolson one of America's great poets. People compared it to works by Walt Whitman, T.S. Eliot. This is a man who's not just being considered and compared to other Black poets, but to the greats, Black and white. So one reviewer said, the richness and variety of Tolson's characters and the elusiveness that absorbs classical, biblical, Oriental, and African references. So again, Tolson is going from the Greek alphabet to African history to European history to the Bible. All of these elements are incorporated into his work. So I want to just read one quote. This is in 1966, Melvin Tolson is inducted into the American Academy of Arts and Letters. And here's he gave an interview and said, quote, I, as a Black poet, have absorbed the great ideas of the great white world and interpreted them in the melting pot idiom of my people. My roots are in Africa, Europe, and America. So this is a man, again, who understands the ability of language, right? Like what you can do with language. And he's not restricted by boundaries, borders, or rules. He's creating new works that are that can't be categorized in one area or another. In fact, he bristled often at being compared to white poets, even those that he admired for their work, because of their politics. And he said, I'm doing something different. I'm taking some of the influence from them, but I'm putting it into my own rhythm, into my own works. Sadly, on August 29th, Melvin Benoris Tolson went to the other side of glory. He went into the hospital for another surgery for the cancer, but did not wake up from the surgery. That's not true. I'm making that part up. He went in for the surgery, had the surgery, seemed to be okay, but did not recover and actually passed away. But apparently he passed away quietly. He had lived 2 years longer than expected. And, so when he died, he was quote unquote at peace, and he was surrounded by loved ones and his family members. So the Norton Anthology of Modern Poetry describes Tolson this way. He was perhaps the premier African-American poet in the high modernist tradition. Melvin Tolson was one of the most densely elusive and verbally dazzling poets of the 20th century. Amazing, right? Amazing story. Just to recap, his poetry collections are Harlem Gallery, Book 1, There should have been more, but he passed away before he could finish any more. Libretto for the Republic of Liberia, and Rendezvous with America. He also published the play Black Boy and Black No More. In 1979, obviously well after his death, a collection of Tolson's poetry was published. That was also called A Gallery of Harlem Portraits. And then in 1999, another collection of his poetry was published by the University of Virginia. I, of course, will leave links to the Tolson's works, and also it's great to know that there are videos online where you can actually hear Melvin Tolson reciting his own poetry. He, of course, as a debater, he has a strong, impressive voice, so it's really exciting to hear. I will, of course, leave a link to that as well. So, literary lessons that we can take from the life of Melvin Tolson. 1, keep going. Like, even if you have to scrabble together, bits and pieces of time, because we're all busy, you still, if you can keep going, you never know when your big moment, your big break is going to happen. If you watch the episode with Victor Laval, where he says, it's really important to find that habit and that discipline, because when somebody says, hey, yeah, we're ready now to see your work, you want to be able to say, here you go. Here's this book, or here's this poem. Here's this collection of essays, poems, whatever it is. And I have some more too, because you did the work, even when nobody was asking for it or was applauding you for it. So Melvin Tolson's life showcases that when people were ready, he was ready. He had the work ready to go. And number 2, follow your passions. Melvin Tolson was writing really interesting poetry that was different from what a lot of the other like Harlem Renaissance writers, a lot of other Black writers at the time were doing. He was getting his influences from the Bible, from the modernist poets, from Black poets, white poets. He created his own style, his own rhythm, his own type of poetry. And maybe it's because he was working in a kind of isolated conditions. He wasn't part of a community, but regardless, he followed his passions. He wrote the words, he wrote the poetry he wanted to write. And it was avant-garde in some ways. It was different. And at first, some people didn't get it, but that didn't stop him. And then look now, even today in the 21st century, people are rediscovering his poems and his poetry and remarking on what a genius he really was. So follow your passions. Be like Melvin. All right, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for showing up, for coming. I hope these little mini lessons, these little stories about these incredible Black writers are inspiring to you. I hope you recognize that so far, everybody we've talked about has had to struggle. Like, nobody's had a life. I haven't shared any stories about any writers who were just, given a pen and then a prize. So I hope you take some inspiration from the stories I'm telling. And I hope you feel the literary magic that just floats around in February. And I hope you come back tomorrow, because I have yet another amazing story to share about a Black writer born in February. I'll be back tomorrow. I hope you will too. Thanks. See you then.